So today is Saturday, February 12, 2022. I'm speaking with Pastor Joseph Kira of the River Jordan Ministries here in Ottawa at Cleopatra Drive. Pastor Joseph, you've done a lot of impactful work to help others here in the city of Ottawa, especially within the Black community and especially with the disadvantaged of our community. And a lot have been written about what you've been doing. So today I would like to just talk with you specifically, focus on one of your initiatives. Not too many people may be aware that you at some point initiated a mentorship program for Black youth.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Thanks, Dave. It's certainly a blessing to have you at River Jordan Ministries. We have known each other for coming to 2 years. It's been a pleasure working with you. It's just nice that we are here talking about some of the things that I do, but things that you are supporting me to actually do, and that's why you're here, and I highly appreciate that. I immigrated to Canada 22 years ago, just to give you a bit of background. And when I came, I joined a church by a pastor now called Bishop Jacob Afolabi. He's now in his 80s. Then he was a bit younger and more vibrant. And he spoke a lot. I was really new in Canada, but he spoke extensively about social justice issues. He was also new from Nigeria. He had been here a few years, but he was so concerned about the high rate of Black youth who are in the criminal justice system. Many of our boys who are at the Ines Road facility, and it's the same story replicated all over this nation. And just to give you background, he actually initiated something called the Black Pastors Forum, which today is now called IPLF, International Pastors Leaders Forum. And one of his biggest goals was to see if he could bring Black pastors together, and these Black pastors form a voice to address the issues of social justice, but particularly address the issue of having many of our Black youth finding themselves on the wrong side of the law. And the Black Pastors Forum existed, but I'm not very sure that the pastors who were there really understood his vision. I think pastors, by default, when they come together, they think of prayer and church growth. And so things went like that, but that's around the time in 2006 when I became a senior pastor of River Jordan Ministries, when we established River Jordan Ministries in February, actually, 2006. And I carried that passion with me. It just stayed with me that this pastor I had met as soon as I came to Canada was concerned about a particular issue, and as I became a pastor, I paid attention to it. Fast forward, after we started River Jordan Ministries, as a pastor, I began getting young men coming to church. And so I began mentoring them. I have this philosophy that you may not do everything, but you can do something. So I began mentoring these young men in the church, and many of them have turned out to be very useful in the community. One particular one that is maybe of interest to you was a young man who came from Uganda. He was 19 years old. That was about 2008, 2009. And I began mentoring him and shared with him about all the things he needs to do to make sure that he succeeds. As we speak today, that young man is serving as an RCMP constable in Digby, Nova Scotia. Fast forward, in 2015, I got invited to the Love Ottawa Executive Board. And the pastors there, as they welcomed me on the board, they asked me, what is it that I was passionate about and what are the things I did? I spoke to them about many things I did in the city, but they quickly sensed that I really had my heart on mentoring of young black youth. And honestly, I'll say it was just divine. I think God just kind of, with all the things I spoke about, pointed these men to this one aspect of everything that I said, to this one aspect of black youth. After meeting them, they convened another meeting for me and asked me to speak to them a bit more details of what is really happening with black youth. And I explained to them, and I told them that, the best way is for me to probably invite single mothers, and than me tell their story, let them share their story. I brought together about two dozen single mothers, or maybe slightly less than that. And the guys at Love Ottawa, One Way Ministries, they were very touched by the stories they had. For lack of a better word, some of them had never heard that these things were happening. 3 mothers out of the 20 mothers who are in, each one of them had most of them had their children incarcerated, but 3 of them had, in the last 3 years, actually buried. Their sons had been victims of guns and gang-related violence. Immediately, the team at Love Ottawa said, Pastor Joseph, we want to rally behind you. We want to stand with you and see if there's something that can be done. That's how the code came about. That's how this mentoring vision and mission I had got formulated into something organized through the support of Love Ottawa. All guys there, but particularly Jerry Organ. Today we are where we are, mentoring young black youth in our community.
Excellent. So you mentioned that you have a mission. How can you state that for us? What is a mission? What you're hoping to accomplish specifically with these young men?
We have this slogan that says, no son should be left behind. I just added the should. It's no son left behind. Our goal is to see in our community that none of our sons is left behind just because he lacks a father, just because he has a father who is so busy to be in his life, just because he lives in a low-income neighborhood. Our goal is to see that all our boys in the city, and now we'll be talking about that later, girls as well, are thriving regardless of social status, regardless of background. And so we have at the CODE, we bring together men from across the city, from the various churches. These men have to be Christian men, and challenge them to take up a role of mentoring a young man in the community. It doesn't have to be someone they know. Usually it's someone they don't know. The young men don't have to be Christian. The young men don't have to have any faith affiliation. It doesn't matter. But the men have to be Christian. It's kind of challenging the church to rise up and be relevant in the community. And so we have an arrangement where a young man is matched with a mentor, a Christian man, and they begin a journey together, coaching, mentoring, supporting role. And usually after a year or so, through that journey, through that walk together, we've seen a lot of changes in the lives of these young people.
So how long have you been doing this?
Dave, when the Love Ottawa team took interest in mentoring the young men, the first thing they did was to help me create a structure. So between 2015 and 2016, we were basically building the structure of what the code should be, and we're still doing that up to now. But I would say from 2016 to date, which is 2022, for the last 6 years, we have been actively involved in having men reach out in the lives of young men and work with them, mentor them, coach them, and we have quite a few stories to tell of what has happened over the last 6 years.
Excellent, excellent. So how difficult or easy is it to get people to sign up for this? Mentors, mentees?
Mentees.
Yeah.
Those are two different questions, actually. Mentees, I have maintained to my team that I can get mentees in every single day. As a black man myself and as a black pastor in the city, daily I encounter young men that do not have a father at home, or who have a father at home, but that father-son relationship is not as it should be. As a result, the young man is going a different way. Take an example. You have a young man here and his father is present, but he chose to go back to Nigeria, chose to go back to South Sudan, chose to go back to South Africa. So dad is present, but is really absent. It's the mother raising up. Then you have those whose fathers just are absent. Then you have an interesting group of some who have their fathers present, but it's interesting that sometimes a different father could bring a different dimension to the life of a young man and talk about things that his actual father may not be able to talk about. And why this is very critical to this community is because the parenting style of some of the fathers from the black community is different from the culture of their children. So Dave, for example, I immigrated from Uganda. All I know about parenting is what I was raised up with in Uganda. I have my son Jesse that you know. He was born at the Ottawa General Hospital. He's Canadian. My parenting style and his culture are two different things. As a result, there is a breakdown in relationship because I'm parenting him courtesy of the parenting style that I was raised in from Uganda. And I'm raising a young man who was born in Ottawa. So sometimes we have those issues as well. So we have those three levels. Either there's no father, or the father is present, but the relationship is not either good or is not as active, or you have those with an active relationship, but another man's presence becomes helpful. The young men, finding them coming back to your question is very easy. They are here at church. I see them. I meet them in the community. That stream is a continuous stream. The difficulty, Dave, I have, and that's why I do appreciate you coming on as a mentor yourself, it's very difficult to find men to sign on to mentor these young men. We've sent appeals to churches. We have had our Facebook page. We have a website. We've done everything that we think we know how. But just finding a man to commit, Christian men to commit to mentor our young men in the community is very difficult. Now with COVID, it has even become more difficult. But we are thankful for some churches that have been very forthcoming. Many churches, but particularly the Woodville Pentecostal Church. We have got quite a few mentors from the Woodville Pentecostal Church. We have some mentors from the Life Center Church, including yourself. We have some mentors from Chapel Ridge Church, and the story continues. But yes, getting mentors is still our biggest challenge. Just either exciting men to come and mentor, or finding the men is our biggest challenge.
Yeah, I can understand that. So, your expectations, basically you've summarized, but where do you think you're going to take this further? I mean, assuming that you can get a number of mentors to sign up, how do you see things progressing?
It would be great, Dev, if we found mentors for probably two reasons. If I found mentors, it would mean that we can increase our operations. Right now, we have about 24 young men who have gone through our system, through our program. Right now, I'd say my goal, and I've mentioned this to my team, is to raise at least 120 men, mentoring 120 young men. And once we hit that number, we will have sufficient terms of reference, experience, expertise, and a good resource base to transfer this model to individual churches and say, hey, this is how it works. So we transfer the model to individual churches. So you have the code now replicated in every church. Then we stay here the code and begin attracting men. We sell the idea to the pastors, and now they excite their own men to begin mentoring. Yes, churches have the youth ministry. We have a youth ministry here. But a youth ministry is very different from what we do at the code. When young people come here, they're all looking nice and singing and they're praising God and sharing testimonies, and they hear the word, they go home. But some of the young men sitting in those pews are broken. The word is shared, the word is powerful all the time, but they need a little bit more for them to even come to a place of appreciating this Father who is at heaven that we're talking about. Because their model, their image of a father is a broken model, is a broken image. And so while they're sitting and hearing all this goodness about his Father, is that they don't connect. The model of the code supplements the youth ministry. While we have all youth coming, many of our mentees are youth members of the youth ministry. They are coming in after they have been touched individually. And so they're coming in at the same pace as anyone else because their heart has been touched now by a father who models the heart of a Father who is in heaven. And now it's easy for them to connect with God. So we want to pass this model to the churches after we hit the number of 120 men. On the other hand, we believe that when we mentor these young men, they themselves are going to become mentors. And for that matter, a more effective caliber of mentors. Because you and I, Dave, we are coming from the vantage point of who we are. We are in our 70s, 60s, 50s. We are working so hard to connect with young men. The young men that we mentor, they are of the same generation with the other young men that are now coming in as mentees. They'll connect better with them. They have gone through the program themselves. They have seen the benefit of the program. They have similar reference points. Our mentees who graduate and now become responsible men, and I'll be telling you about some of our success stories. When they graduate, they themselves become mentors. So we are reproducing ourselves. We are producing a reservoir of young men who are growing up into not only responsible fathers, but into potential mentors to other kids who don't have a father to mentor them.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And you talk about your success stories. Let me hear about some of them.
Yeah, you know, people normally say don't blow your own trumpet, but when it comes to the code, I'm so excited. I want to blow my own trumpet, honestly. That's with due humility and with a lot of gratitude to the men that are working day and night to mentor these young people. Apparently, I personally don't mentor any young person. So it's men who are mentoring. So a lot of all my credit and respect and gratitude to these men who are mentoring. But I told you already about our first mentee, who is now an RCMP constable. And he's very proud to become a mentor. He has actually requested to be in mentoring from Digby. He says can do that virtually. But we have stories, Dave. Time will not allow us to tell, but I'll share with you maybe 2 or 3. We have, I don't have to say the name, but we had a young man that came to our program, and he was mentored by Jerry. Jerry, you'll hear me talk about Jerry a lot when I speak about the code, just because of the contribution he has brought to the code. If among his legacies, Jerry has many legacies, especially with the NFL, but I really want the code to be one of his legacies, something that he put his heart, blood, life, soul to. I owe him so much. He
That's
began
Jerry Organ.
Jerry Organ, Jerry Organ, yes. Jerry began mentoring this young man. When we met this young man, he had a string of crimes on his name, at least 2 to 3, and quite tough charges. This young man was struggling with school, struggling with football, and nothing was really working. Had a lot of anger. His father had passed on, so he was an orphan. Jerry Organ began walking alongside this young man. Long story short, that young man is now employed. That young man is a very valuable member of the team that he works for. I'm sure if he tendered his resignation letter today, that organization would be very devastated. They hold him with very high esteem. He's valuable to them. That young man, his mom told me that she doesn't have to shop anymore for certain particular needs that I will not mention, because he takes care of those needs. That young man recently, I think I was told he engaged a girl and planning to marry. That young man has been on some of our outreaches, telling the world his story and exciting the community about the importance of mentoring. That is a great news. Now, this is why I say that story is great. When we met this young man, he had 2 friends. 2 of his friends were 10 times more sober than him. Very good boys. I knew them. I knew all of them. He was a tough guy. He was the guy who, but his 2 friends were so sober. As we speak now, both of those friends are no longer. They're not anymore. We buried them. I attended their funerals right here in Ottawa. Because this young man got mentoring, and he started a productive journey. His 2 friends who potentially didn't have any issues, and maybe that explains why they didn't even come into the mentoring process, because they were sober. Because they didn't have chance to be mentored, I attended their funerals, both of them. So that is one story. The other story is an interesting story of my own son. I'm a pastor and I'm a father, and I told you some of my limitations. I'm from Africa, though I've tried as much as possible, and I'm to be Canadian, and I'm a proud Canadian. But my African heritage affects and influences everything about me, including my parenting. And so there was a bit of a disconnect between me and my son. So we found him someone to mentor him, because he's interested in ministry. So we found him a man who himself is a son of a pastor. R.J. McEwen is a son to Bishop McEwen. So at the CODE, we try to match these young people. So we said, Jesse is a son to a pastor, and he wants to become a pastor himself. R.J. is a son to a pastor, and he's a pastor himself. Let's match the 2. R.J. got into the life of my son, Jesse, and they became friends. He began mentoring him, telling him about ministry and all the things he has learned. Things I may not have been able to communicate to Jesse as effective as RJ could. Long story short, my son Jesse makes me very proud. He's an effective young man, doing a lot of good in this city, and I'll not be surprised if in future he becomes the pastor of this church. Wonderful. Because a mentor came in his life. I'm not sure, honestly, Dave, I'll tell you, I'm not sure if I would have the results I have now in Jesse if I had solely fathered him. And I would tell you why, but I'll not. That will be spoken off camera. Maybe my last one would be a young man that came from Uganda, very timid, very shy. He came here right into high school. By the time they processed his papers to come here, I was going to high school. He even came to church here and it didn't quite fit because he's from a different culture. And so we connected him to one of our mentors, Roger Linton. Roger Linton is a former high school teacher. So we are very deliberate about our matching process.
Yes.
So we saw this young man is in high school from another country. He's finding it difficult to connect with others. So we got a high school teacher and connected him. The young man hasn't come to our youth ministry as would want because he felt he didn't really belong. But Roger journeyed with this young man for a period of 1 year plus. As we speak right now, the young man is finished his high school. He's very confident. He's very happy, very productive. And now I have seen him some days coming in the youth ministry.
Interesting.
Dave, the
Good
stories,
successes.
the success stories with the
Yeah.
code are many. You
Yes.
asked, but in the interest of time, those are the three I can share with you.
Totally understand. I was going to ask you about your criteria for matching, but I think you've covered that. It seems that there are some specific things you look at when you have a mentor and a mentee, and ensure that you're putting them on the right channels together. You look at how they could work.
Yeah, I could quickly comment on that. So for a young man coming in as a mentee, he writes us an application with a profile of who he is. Anyone coming in as a mentor, there's an application form, so you give us a profile of who you are. So we look at our young men and say, just an example, we have a young man, stories are many. So we have a young man, mentee, who said he wants to be a medical doctor. We saw in our mentors, we had a medical doctor. So we matched the two because they had something in common, medical school. As we speak right now, that young man is at Ottawa U doing biochemistry, preparing to go to medical school with the support of our mentor. We had this other young man who was matched with Jerry Organ. The reason we did match them is because he was a football guy. Jerry Organ is a football legend. There was something in common. So we try to look at our mentors. What do they have? And our mentees, what are their interests? We match them. Right now, we are looking at the two young men who are into business. When we look at the list of our mentors, we don't have any businessmen in our list of mentors. So those three boys are going without a mentor right now because in our database, we don't have any men with business skills. So we match young people based on who they want to be, who they are, who they want to be, and with mentors who kind of match and mirror the things these young men want to be and what they're looking to become.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So if someone out there has this thought of being a mentor and they're hearing your message, how would they go about doing it? How would they go about connecting with you?
Our process, we have a website called theCODE Ottawa, THECODE Ottawa, thecodeottawa.ca. You can send us a note on the website. We also have a phone number. I can give my phone number, 613-218-3286. You can also contact One Way Ministries. Just Google One Way Ministries or Love Ottawa. One Way Ministries or Love Ottawa. Get their contact and just say, hey, I want to be a mentor with a code. Most pastors in the city, generally, especially the pastors of the larger congregation, whether it's the Met or Woodville or Life Center or Community Pentecostals, Peace Tower, most of the larger churches know about us. So if anyone reaches out to any of the churches in the city and say, hey, I want to mentor and I've been told about the code, where do I start from? We can always provide. But I'll make sure that we have the numbers right at the bottom of this broadcast, and you can always reach out to us. It's just a small an application form you can fill, then just take you through the vetting process to see if you fit the criteria of what we want in a mentor, and we have you on board. Now, it's important to add this. You may not either be selected as a mentor, or you may not even be interested in mentoring, but you're interested in the idea of supporting young men, particularly in this case, young black youth, or what we describe as youth at risk. You can come on and handle administrative issues, handle fundraising issues, handle publicity issues. So beyond mentoring, you can come on board and do many other things. You can bring your skills on. Could be skills in HR that could be helpful to us in advancing this cause. All the people working on the code, all the men are volunteers, just are offering their time. So you may have an hour or 2 hours a week that you can devote to helping young black men. Please do it. Even if you cannot mentor, we may take advantage of your skills.
Excellent, Pastor Joseph. Thank you very much for your time. I know you're a very busy man.
Yes.
And hopefully, we can get the message out appropriately and get some responses coming back from that. Thank you very much again.
Thank you so much, Dave. I mean, I want to personally use this opportunity to appreciate you for joining the code and just using all the skills that you have, the networks you have, to be an amazing resource to the code, and helps me a lot, especially as the team lead and being a senior pastor, and the many other things that you've mentioned that I do in the city. I run shelters for refugees and newcomers. So having men like you come on board and help me share this responsibility with me is something that I cherish and I appreciate. And maybe also use this same opportunity to appreciate all the men on the code, both mentors and those who are working on the leadership team. I can't mention names, but everyone, and the women. Now we have women as well working on our leadership team, and the pastors who have opened up the doors to allow us access their men's ministries. Some pastors have donated to us financially. The Love Ottawa team, One Way Ministries, for I'm just full of gratitude for all the work that has been done, and for all the men and women who have poured their souls in the code. And so I want to thank you for taking time to be here and for the work you do. I also want to thank the single mothers who are raising up these young men. I mean, we get a chance once a month or once a week to interact with their boys, but they are champions, they are heroes who are raising some of these young men single-handedly. We as at the code express a lot of respect and gratitude for the great work you're doing for the community in raising your sons in the absence of their fathers. Thank you.
Wonderful.